And welcome to the Writer's Life, the place we get the sight, sound, smells, taste, in my particular writer's life, and where you get the truth about the writer's life. So subscribe if you haven't already, and punch the like button, tap the bell for notifications so that you don't miss out on one single exciting video. Don't forget to go to the store, vinzandri.com, 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 for all your thriller needs. And now you can start buying directly on the website. Not every book's available on the website because some of them are in Kindle Select, and others are about 40% of them are from traditional publishers. I don't know if I guess I could probably sell those on the site. Why not? Don't tell anybody. But anyway, I'm currently revamping the website so that it reflects which books are available on the website. Eventually, there'll be a lot. And to be honest, if you buy off the website, it's easy. It's easy peasy. You don't need to go to a store, even if it's an online store. And I get to collect all the money. I don't have to share it with anybody. So it's better for the writer, and it's easier and more convenient for you. Mm-hmm. Alrighty then. Enough of the public service announcements. Or, no, I should say enough of the shilling. Need a little afternoon wake up. So, like the thumbnail says, alone but not really, only child but not really an only child, or whatever it says. One of the questions that Frank Theodat asked me in my interview with Pulp, Pipe, and Poetry. That's Frank's Substack. And there's a link to it below. You can check out the interview below. And in fact, check out his whole Substack. It's really good. There's poetry, there's short stories, there's how-tos, there's all sorts of good stuff to be had there. In any case, he asked me, like, when did I start writing? And I told him I thought about it. And really, I started writing. I'm trying to get the good stuff in here. There we go. I really started writing. I really began the process when I was just pretty much right out of the womb. Well, not that early, but as soon as I was old enough to, get myself out of bed, get dressed, and throw a jacket on and go outside. That's really when it started. So you figure 4, 5 years old. Back in those days, and I'm one of those guys now that can legitimately use the phrase back in those days, it was perfectly fine for a small child to get out of bed, get yourself a bowl of cereal or whatever it is, and while everybody else is sleeping or whatever they're doing, my dad would be off at work by then. So say it's like 7:00 or something, 7:15, or sometimes he'd be up and going to work. Because I can remember distinctly, like, talking to him while he was getting ready to go off to a construction site somewhere or whatever, and whatever. I can remember actually doing that when it was still dark out. In that case, it was probably winter, and I probably went right down to the basement to play. But anyway, but we lived in an area that was fairly, I don't want to say wild at the time. It was just a bunch of farm fields. It was, more specifically, there was like the city of Cohoes, Cohoes, was to the east, and the town of Colony was to the west. And we lived right on the border. There was a street called Baker Avenue, and we were that was the dividing line between the two. Our address was Cohoes, but we were technically in the town of Colony. unless you live here, that means nothing to you. But anyway, at the time, we just had like this one house, and it was behind us was all farm fields, and they went for miles in all directions. And there was like one house next to us, but the kids were those kids. One of the kids is dead from like kind of old age. That's how old they were at the time. Um, and then there was like a bunch of empty lots, wooded lots, and there were not really anybody, a 4 or 5 year old would hang out with. So I was alone. And my sisters, I had my sisters, but they were older. Like like my oldest sister was like entering high school, and then the other sister was just older enough that like she didn't want to do things I wanted to do, and I didn't want to do anything that she wanted to do. So like you know, we didn't do much together, but which is normal. So I used to, weather permitting, I'd put on whatever and go out into the fields, and you could do that. It was perfectly fine. It was perfectly safe. You didn't have to worry about like being snatched up or any of that stuff. Occasionally, I would run into some teenagers, maybe using their dirt bikes or something like that, and I can remember I never had any problem with them. They were always really cool. Remember now, like these are the days of the hippies, and there was even, if I recall, my oldest sister did take me to like a place in the woods, like they had a fort, and I don't know what they did there, drank beers and stuff like that. But it was their fort, and it was a bunch of, I thought they were older, way older. They're probably like 14 and 15 years old or something like that at the time. But it's kind of cool. But most of the time I was just alone, and so like I would make up stories. That, like one day I'd be like a gladiator, and I remember making my mother nuts going around town trying to find, toy stores, trying to find like gladiator swords and shields and stuff, and next day I'd be a cowboy. I wore a cowboy hat like forever, all the time. I wore it out. And then, we had a lot of World War II stuff hanging around because like a bunch of my grandfather was in World War II, and my uncles. So we had a bunch of, like helmets hanging around and all sorts of stuff, German helmets. So like I'd dress up as a German soldier. I'd be in the Wehrmacht, and like people would come to the house, just, like to drop off blueprints or something like that for my dad. And they'd be like, you have a German soldier running, you have a 4 foot tall German soldier running around your house. My mother would be like, yeah, so what? It was normal to them. But I was always making up stories, war stories, and that's really when it started, just my creative imagination. And soon as I could read, I would obsessively read like St. John's version of the Passion of Christ, and because it was both horrifying, thrilling. Well, not both, but it was horrifying, thrilling, and suspenseful. I didn't look into the religious part of it. That was the spooky part, but it was just like, wow, like what a story, because even then I think I kind of understood that there was three plot points to it. Man, kind of a Western almost, like guy rolls into town, not on horseback, but on muleback, does his thing in town, creates a ruckus. And then like the sheriffs, or in this case, the Sanhedrin, want him arrested, and they string him up, and they pay for it in the end, and when he rises from the dead. So it's really like a Western almost, and 3-act play. And I would read it obsessively. And then I think one day I was in the basement and I was trying to reenact the crucifixion. I think that's when my parents were like, oh, okay, enough of that. You don't go there. And I was like, what? So anyway, but I was using the creative side of my brain. And I got so used to that aloneness, but I wasn't really alone because, and then I couldn't wait to get into bed to read my comics and stuff like that, Sergeant Rock and all that stuff. So I got used to being alone, and by the time, and then my mother was like, we got to get out of here. We need to go to like a real neighborhood where he can have friends and do stuff, like with the friends and stuff. And doesn't it turn out they're all girls where we move? And they go to summer camp. And my parents did not send me to summer camp. They didn't have the keshish. And it wasn't until I went to football years later when my dad sent me to football camp that I actually did some sort of summer camp. But anyway, like I liked being alone. That's how it started. And maybe that's maybe that's was a red flag right off the bat in terms of the relationships I'd have, and eventually my career path. Just being alone, making up stories. I'm not doing anything different now than I was doing when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I'm not doing anything different. It's just that I'm doing it professionally and writing it all down and selling it. That's the only difference. I do not dress up as a Wehrmacht soldier anymore, though. At least not in public. Anyway, all right, that's it. That's all I got for today. I hope you're all having a great one. It's beautiful out. And I'll come to you tomorrow, God willing. Ciao, ciao.